Welcome to our online worship service. We greet you in the spirit of freedom, tolerance, justice and peace. And may the God of love and peace be with us. My name is Alex Bradley and I'm a Unitarian minister living and working in Cheshire. And I light this flame with words from Albert Einstein. There are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. And a prayer. God of love, sometimes we forget to stop and thank you for all that is good in our lives. Our blessings are so many. Our hearts should be filled with gratitude for the joy of living, for the ability to love and be loved, and for the opportunity to see the everyday wonders of creation. Often there are things in our lives that are less than we would hope them to be, and life seems very hard and challenging. Even in the midst of such difficulties, help us to realize the blessings we have. God of all blessings, source of all life, giver of grace in all things, we thank you for the gift of life, for the breath that sustains life, for the food of this our earth that nurtures life, and for the love of family and friends, without which there would be little happiness in life. We thank you for the beauty of creation, and for this our great earth, for the joy that the ear may hear, for the unknown that we cannot behold, filling the universe with wonder, and for the expanse of space that draws us beyond the definitions of ourselves. For the miracle of life, for the miracle of science and all its discoveries, for the miracle of love, we give our thanks. Amen. And our first reading comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 9, verses 13 to 17. Jesus replied, "You give them something to eat." The disciples answered, "We have only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, unless we go and buy food for all this crowd." About 5,000 were there. But he said to his disciples, "Have them sit down in groups of about 50 each." The disciples did so, and everyone sat down. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke them. Then he gave them to the disciples to distribute to the people. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. And our second reading is from the 19th century American poet Walt Whitman. Why? Who makes much of a miracle? As to me, I know of nothing else but miracles. Whether I walk the streets of Manhattan or dart my sight over the roofs of houses towards the sky, or wade with naked feet along the beach just in the edge of the water, or stand under trees in the woods, or talk by day with anyone I love, or sleep in the bed at night with anyone I love, or sit at table at dinner with the rest, or look at strangers riding opposite me in the car, or watch honeybees busy around the hive of a summer forenoon, or animals feeding in the fields, or birds, or the wonderfulness of insects in the air, or the wonderfulness of the sundown, or of stars so quiet and bright, or the exquisite, delicate, thin curve of the new moon in spring. These with the rest, one and all, are to me miracles, the whole referring, yet each distinct and in its place. To me, Every hour of the light and dark is a miracle. Every cubic inch of space is a miracle. Every square yard of the surface of the earth is spread with the same. Every foot of the interior swarms with the same. To me, the sea is a continual miracle. The fishes that swim, the rocks, the motion of the waves, the ships with men in them. What stranger miracles are there? It's a miracle. Those are words we quite often say when someone performs an action quite unexpectedly or out of character. A student who seems a lost cause passes an examination, perhaps with flying colours. The rush hour train that is always late turns up spot on time on the one and only day you arrived a minute late because you had problems finding a parking space. Your favourite football team avoids relegation by a whisker when it wins 1-0 in the last game of the season. All these might be miracles. The word miracle is often defined along the lines of an event that violates the known laws of nature. However, the words sign or wonder are sometimes used as synonyms for miracle, which brings us into far more interesting areas of thought and inquiry. What exactly do we mean by a miracle? How can we know that something is impossible? Scientific knowledge accumulates by careful observation, testing, and empirical inquiry. We know, on the basis of our present understanding at least, that certain things are possible while others are not. The problem comes when we see miracles as events that violate the known laws of nature, rather than as amazing and wondrous events that expand and enrich our consciousness. One of the greatest scholars of the early Christian church, a man called Origen of Alexandria, saw this clearly. What person of sense, he wrote, would believe that the world was created from nothing in 6 days? Or that Jesus saw all the kingdoms of the world from the high mountain when he was tempted? Rather, he says, such passages should be interpreted in a spiritual sense. What is it that passage is trying to say to us, the readers? Some words are meant to be taken literally, while others are meant to be understood in a figurative or metaphorical sense. If we tell someone that we love them to the stars and back, it does not mean that we are going on a space mission to Mars with them. It is a way of saying that our love for that person goes beyond anything else in our lives. The feeding of the 5,000 people, the multitude, is a wonderful story of an event that is a miracle in the sense that it breaks the bounds of imagined possibilities, not the laws of nature. I remember reading a commentary by Professor William Barclay, who wrote that the miracle was that when the disciples shared out the 5 loaves and 2 fishes, the rest of the crowd, who might otherwise have kept their food rations for themselves, were inspired by Jesus to share them round, so that everyone present had something to eat. Is this a miracle? In my view, it is. Gandhi is credited with saying, "The world has enough for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed." We should not feel guilty at having the good things of this world, but we are called upon by God to share them with others, rather like a good parent will tell a child to share his or her sweets and toys with their siblings and friends. In a world where there is still so much poverty, starvation, and even lack of access to clean water, we need such miracles of human consciousness and compassion. Writing in the 19th century, Walt Whitman speaks movingly and with the passion of a great poet about the miracles in everyday life. He looks at animals in the fields and birds and insects in the air and sees miracles in all of them. Every hour of the light and the dark, the surface of the earth, the sea is a miracle, he says. Human company with people we love and with strangers is a miracle. I remember being impressed many years ago when a friend of mine said with great feeling how much of a miracle was contained simply in a blade of grass. Since Walt Whitman's time, science and technology have expanded and are still expanding to heights and depths undreamt of in his time. In our own time, the last 30 years has seen the birth and explosive growth of the World Wide Web. If you had told someone 150 years ago that people living in different places would be able to speak to and see each other using little boxes with moving pictures that connected to other boxes, that connected to big ships going round in the heavens, that sent the messages back to the earth to other people using little boxes, you would quite probably have been dismissed as a crank or simply mad. If you had expressed those thoughts 450 years ago, you might well have been burnt as a witch or a wizard. The fact that I can make this video that can be seen by you at any time and day of your choosing, long after I have recorded it, is surely an astounding, mind-blowing, staggering concept in its own right, surely deserving the title miracle. The great spiritual traditions are often highly reserved about the benefits of miracles. Jesus is recorded as having had a very ambivalent attitude to miracles himself. He refused a challenge by his opponents to perform signs and wonders to prove himself. There is an ancient story about a disciple who proudly told his guru that he had finally learned to walk on water after practicing for 25 years. The teacher was not impressed. Then you have wasted your time, he said. You could have crossed over straight away by paying a penny to the ferryman. Miracles are not to be seen as status symbols or egotistic displays of spiritual one-upmanship, but as signs of God's grace and love. A real miracle, sign or wonder is seen in ordinary everyday events of life. Jesus feeds the multitude by the power of his presence and example. A seed bursts its bounds to become a seedling and then a full-grown plant. A tree puts out its fruit in due season. A miracle is neither good nor bad in itself. It is how it is used that makes it good or bad. Computers and the internet are the most wonderful of technical wonders that can bring people far distant together and give us access to all the knowledge of the world that formerly had to be contained in books. Yet they are so often used for trivial and unworthy purposes, even sometimes for crime and warfare. Jesus fed the crowds who gathered around him with 5 loaves and 2 fish. We, who live 2,000 years later, have access to technology that could feed the world several times over with sufficient to spare. Yet we still live in a world where people and animals starve in their millions. The beautiful earth, seas and sky that Whitman celebrated are still being polluted and damaged. Our technology has developed beyond all previous imagining. It is in our hearts and minds that we need a miracle of rebirth and renewal. Let us pray for such miracles of rebirth, for a true metanoia, a turning around, in attitudes and behaviour, so that all may share in life's riches. Let us put our hands to the plough, to work to make it possible. That would be a true miracle, a miracle pleasing to God. May it be so. And now a benediction to conclude our worship. May we look for miracles in our lives and feel truly blessed in all we receive. May we know the wonder of each moment and be grateful for gifts, both great and small. May our words and actions be mirrors of the divine love. Amen.